One of my favorite places to speak when I have the opportunity is at public schools, high schools and middle schools. And part of the reason for that is that I believe while we have a lot of education and a lot of test preparation and a lot of things that our kids are now required to know because of the TEA and other things like that, uh, we miss sometimes offering leadership skills and leadership ideas to anyone who's not already in a leadership role as a student. So if they're not on student council, if they're not the band's grand marshal, if they're not the president of the Rotary Club in the school or the debate team in the school or the captain on the football team, there's like zero leadership skills offered to them or for them as a student body as a whole. But if you believe John Maxwell's idea from the 360-degree leader, that regardless where you are in life, you can lead up, you can lead down, or you can lead your peers. Meaning, because leadership is influence, nothing more and nothing less. A good communicating student has the opportunity to influence their teacher, to influence lower classmen, to influence their peers. But if leadership principles are not taught to them, what are they going to influence? Now, here's something that I know to be an absolute fact. The Learn to Roar leadership philosophy breaks down leadership into four very simple to understand pillars: relevant, ownership, authority, and responsible. But because leadership is influence, nothing more and nothing less, and influence is a tool, influence doesn't care who uses it. Think about that for a moment as a high school junior. Influence doesn't care who uses it, any more than a spoon does, or a knife does, or a soccer ball does. But you could use any one of those tools for very good things or very bad things. Why aren't our students given more access to leadership principles to apply as students? What about when they leave school to go off to the workforce or leave school to go off to college? Learn to Roar leadership principles are easy enough to understand, to follow, and to apply that anybody at any age can use them. So let me run through really quickly how leadership principles from Learn to Roar could be applied to your high school students or your junior high students. Well, the first part of Learn to Roar is learn to be relevant. What does that mean? Do you know that as early as middle school, especially in Texas, where some of your high schools are 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, and some of them are only 10th, 11th, and 12th, meaning middle school is 7, 8, 9. But that 9th grade year, whether it's in middle school or high school, still counts towards your high school transcript. And did you know that in those schools where you have elective classes, you get to choose classes that most high school students take blow-off classes. They take the ones that they're convinced are going to be really, really simple, where the stuff that they're going to have to learn and the tests they're going to have to take is going to be really easy for them. They may not really like it. They may not really enjoy it, but they take it because it's easy. That path of least resistance, especially if you're in middle school and taking 9th grade courses, can hurt you when you get ready to go off to college. And you may think in your 9th grade year, that's not relevant to me. I'm not going to college. That's not relevant to me. I'm not going to the military. That's not relevant to me. I'm just going to get a job. I've been mentoring in the high school for a little over 5 years in one particular public high school. And I've watched those students who come into their 10th grade year wishing that their 9th grade year had been a little better invested in what they were going to expect in the 10th grade. But trying to pull those grades back up when they didn't really care because they were the big man on campus in the 9th grade, trying to pull those grades back up and work towards something solid as a high school transcript, they felt like they were already behind. But I also know the ones that by the time they got to the middle of their junior year, they'd written off going to college, written off having a good job. They were already negotiating with mom and dad how much their rent was going to be to stay at home for the next 3 or 4 years. And they'd given up. Because what they were learning, what they were applying themselves to, wasn't relevant to the next phase of life. You've got to be relevant to what's going on today, to the people around you. Part of that relevance is resonating and being relatable. It's real easy when you're in high school to kind of isolate yourself and hang out with a niche that fits your mood for the moment. And then not even consider, especially as teenagers, none of us did, consider what the day after graduation was going to be like. There are a few students who look to the day after graduation and think, wow, this is going to be awesome freedom. I get to go off to college or go off to the military or go off to a career, and I'm so excited about this. But most are thinking, whew, I'm done with high school. If what they're studying and applying themselves to and focusing on isn't relevant to the next phase, it could be a huge detriment. As parents, leaders, influencers, mentors for those students, we've got to help them understand that it's not just about passing today's test. Yes, that's important. It's not just about passing this class, while that's important. All of those are tiny pieces in this giant puzzle of your next phase in life, and what you're doing has to be relevant. The next pillar is ownership. And ownership for students is the same as it is for leaders all the way up to the CEO. If you don't take control of your actions, take control of your attitude, hold yourself fully accountable for how all those things play out in life, then you're going to find yourself living your life with a victim mentality, and you will self-prophesy. It will be a self-fulfilling prophecy. Everybody hates me, nobody loves me, I'm going to go eat worms. And while you're eating worms, no one's going to like you. And now you're asking yourself, which one is true? Am I eating worms because no one likes me? Or does no one like me because I eat worms? If you don't take ownership of your attitude and your actions, that will happen to you in middle school, in high school, in college, and in your career. There are many people I know today in their late 30s and early 40s still holding on to some victimhood mentality that they feel like they just don't get the right edge. But maybe it's their age, their race, their sex, their weight, their background, the particular college that they went to. Whatever it is, they find a reason to blame their lack of success on somebody else, rather than taking ownership for their own diligence, their own focus, their own attitude, their own actions. And my friend, it can happen to you too. It's an easy trap. It's a natural trap. It's especially a natural trap when our culture and our society shoves the victim mentality down the throats of our students by encouraging them to find safe spaces, to not engage in conversations that challenge their ideologies or their thoughts, to harbor a resentment for anyone who presents a notion new to them. That's a scary, scary place for us to be. But for our young people, it's absolutely frightening. And at the same time, that double-edged sword prevents them from taking ownership for how they think and feel. They have the right to choose how they think and feel, regardless of what someone else says. And safe spaces puts that onus back on the person who said it, not on the student giving them the right to take ownership of how they think and feel. That's a very small difference in perspective, but a gigantic difference in outcome. Next in the 4 pillars of Learn to Roar is authority. I say as a leader, authority is given to you more as you give it away. The more people you delegate authority to, the more authority you will have. Just think about the practice of that for a moment. The more employees that you have, the more authority you have. The more team members you have, even if they're volunteers, the more of them there are, the more authority that you have. The more experience you have, the more authority that you have. Even students have opportunities in leadership roles to participate as team captains, to participate in student government. And refusing to do that because of the extra work will hinder their ability to learn the value of both respecting authority above you and delegating authority below you and evening your authority across your peers. That's that 360-degree leader. Students who understand the authority of their teacher and respect the authority of their teacher will find that they get respect from their teacher, and opportunities to lead will be delegated to them by their teachers, by their counselors, by their mentors. And as that moves down the layer from an upperclassman to a lowerclassman, from a team leader like a captain or a team coach, down to players and other members of the team, those opportunities to lead, to grow authority, to exercise authority, to exhibit authority, to empower and equip others with authority, all of those elements should begin as early as middle school. They do anyway. If you think I'm kidding, just look at the gang activity. Look at the circles of bullies. Look at the little niches of people who pick on each other. Anybody seen Mean Girls? That's authority being exercised. Authority that was delegated to one particular student because of their attitude or their looks or their style or the wealth of their family. And now suddenly it impacts a whole lot of people. That authority has got to be measured and managed. Authority is the currency of influence. And leadership is influence, nothing more and nothing less. So whether you take the authority as a tyrant, as a dictator, as a bully, as a drug dealer, as a gang leader, or your delegated authority because your teacher sees good traits in you that should be the influence of students around you. Authority is a big, big deal in leadership, but it only comes to you when you A, respect the authority above you, and B, delegate the authority to those around you. And finally, responsible. This is a hard one for students. It's a hard one for them to grasp because, especially understanding, the reason we have insurance laws that say that your driver's insurance goes down at 25 years old is because it's a proven medical fact that the prefrontal cortex is not fully developed in a high school student or even any young adolescent until they're 25 years old, which means the comprehension of cause and effect in the form of short-term and long-term consequences is skewed a bit, even for the brightest, even for the sharpest, even for the best trained young people. It's just reality. I don't care if you don't like the fact, it's still a fact. What can we do to mitigate the fact? That's the big question. So when we talk about responsibility, it's really easy for me to say to a dad, to a CFO, to an organizational leader, to an entrepreneur, what you're building today isn't for you. While you may reap some immediate benefits, what you're building today is for the next generation. What you're building today is for the next evolution of your business or your industry. What you're building today is for the next level of employees. What you're building today is for your children. Well, a 17 or 18-year-old or a 14 or 15-year-old don't look at that and go, I got children. Yeah, I don't have children. I am a children. What am I supposed to be building to leave behind? And here's the reality. There was a video that was released on Facebook live streamed on Facebook, of 3 older teens, 19, 18, 17-ish. I believe the girl in the video was 16 or 17 years old, severely abusing and beating a handicapped man because of the color of his skin. They said so in the video. They nearly beat him to death. They recorded the whole thing live. And they showed their own faces in their video, not to mention the fact that it was live streamed so everybody knows who posted it. But their behavior was so horrid, and yet millions of people watched that video. When I talk about responsible, Angela Mayu says, people will forget what you said. They might even forget what you did. They'll never forget how you made them feel. The impact that a 15-year-old girl who's judgmental about someone else's weight, about their hairstyle, about their body type, can have for a lifetime is inestimable. And so it is for a 12 or 13-year-old young man who wants to be a bully of others to make himself feel better because he feels a little insecure about some aspect of his life. I say it all the time. The kindergarten phrase is true. It takes one to know one, and I was one. And I know one when I see one. I was a bit of a bully in middle school. Fortunately, there were people in my life that helped break that early on, long before I got into high school. But I see how that whole process works, both as a bully and as a victim. I've been on both sides. And I can tell you right now, when that nature gets into someone young, if it doesn't get broken, if it's not addressed, that nature carries them through life. How many movies have we seen? Even Central Intelligence with Rock Johnson and Kevin Hart, one of the underlying themes of that entire movie was a particular bully. And from beginning to end of the entire movie, the same attitude was carried forward of being a bully. No one ever broke him of it. And in his adult life, he was just as responsible for damaging and hurting the emotions of others as he was when he was 12 or 13 years old. Being responsible for how you leave other people feeling with your words, with your actions, with your deeds, with the influence that you have in your peer group is absolutely significant. And it will not only impact your today, but it will definitely influence your future. I encourage you, if you have students, whether you're teachers, and we've trained this particular content, the Learn to Roar leadership philosophy, for the National PTA, for the Georgia State PTA, along with the Attitude Hack. And the Attitude Hack and Learn to Roar are modified programs from middle school to college to CEO and CFO. The Attitude Hack, as a standalone program, has been trained at the University of Kinshasa, for the government of the Congo, for GE Finance. This is real solid leadership material that everybody from middle school to CFO level can handle and apply and make a big difference in their life. I hope you'll take this lesson and share it with some students that you know, that you'll pass it on to teachers and help them see the concept of the Learn to Roar philosophy and how it might apply in their school. And by all means, if you know of a school, public schools or private schools, doesn't matter to me, if they're middle school all the way up to colleges, I'd be delighted to come in and share the Learn to Roar leadership philosophy with teachers, with students, even with faculty, just so they can understand what it is that we really need to help young people understand. In the meantime, I'm off to Wingman, and then I actually have a meeting with a public school today to talk about Learn to Roar and the Attitude Hack and see if it's something that will fit with their school. They have purchased other programs of ours in the past, so maybe it'll be a good fit. I hope so, and I hope that it will really help their student body. Until I see you again, I am J Loren Norris, and you've been watching Tell It Like It Is TV. Have a blessed day.